I've said this 18,000 times. I'm only doing this to defeat Donald Trump. Nobody seems to want to do that in the Democratic Party right now other than me, because Joe Biden can't is my proposition, because the data says he can't. No one in the country right now cares. In fact, most of the people in the country are going to the Trump rally right now because he's listening to them. No one's asking about this stuff. I'm just frustrated. I hope you understand why I'm getting tired of it. You're doing your jobs, but you're not asking the questions that Americans give a shit about.
New Hampshire Democrats primary is a little confusing. The DNC made South Carolina the first official contest, making Tuesday's results somewhat meaningless on the Democratic side. President Biden's name is not even on the ballot. He didn't campaign in the state.
Well, I'm kind of angry about it. And some people have said, why should we write his name in when he won't even give us the time of day?
Want to shut off the border.
Yeah, I changed my vote this morning. I went, instead of voting for Haley, I voted for Donald Trump this morning.
You changed your vote this morning?
Yeah,
why?
Sure did. You have a good day. I think the primary's over. I think that, Mr. Trump's going to be our next candidate.
All right, guys, so the New Hampshire primary is today, and hopefully this video is still relevant by the time you guys watch the video, but voters are headed to the polls to vote in the Republican and Democrat primary. Now, the Democrat primary is a little bit different than the Republican primary because Democrats, the DNC, didn't really want to have a primary in New Hampshire. In fact, they essentially put Iowa to the back of the line. That's why there was not a Democrat Iowa caucus. And they wanted to do the same thing to New Hampshire as well, too, for what appears to be woke reasons on its face. Okay, they basically are saying that these states are too white, right? New Hampshire and Iowa are too white to go first, and therefore they're actually really going to have states like South Carolina that has more of a diverse population, aka more black people. They're going to go first because they're more likely to vote for their Lord and Savior, Joe Biden, right? That's actually the real reason, right? So basically what is happening in New Hampshire, just to simplify it for you guys so you understand exactly what's going on here, is that the DNC did not want a primary to be held there. Okay, they wanted them to go to the back of the line because Joe Biden would not perform well, or there's a chance that Joe Biden would not perform well because he did it back in 2020. Again, this is part of the reason why I say that, the DNC tries to rig their own primary. This is one of their primary rigging strategies, is to basically boohoo, whine, and cry too many white people as an excuse to make a state that Joe Biden is likely to win go first. This is what they're doing. However, the Democrats in New Hampshire were pissed off about this, and they decided to forge ahead with having the primary anyway. So in response, the DNC basically took Joe Biden's name off the ballot. Basically, Joe Biden's name is not on the ballot, and they have to write in Joe Biden. Okay, so what is happening is that there is a primary being held there, but Joe Biden's name is not on the ballot. So voters now have to write in Joe Biden's name if they really want to vote for him. And this is kind of a big deal. It's something to watch because Dean Phillips, who is Joe Biden's strongest challenger, is surging in New Hampshire. And who knows, maybe he could pull off an upset. I mean, it's unlikely because you still have brainwashed Democrats that are going to show up and write in Joe Biden anyways, despite the clear and obvious disrespect that the DNC and Joe Biden is showing towards New Hampshire voters.
Wrote in Joe Biden.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Were you disappointed that his name actually wasn't on the ballot, or was that a secondary issue to you?
Disappointed, but very happy to vote for him by writing his name in.
Yeah. Obviously, Dean Phillips hit this state very, very hard, trying to, really take advantage of the fact that Joe Biden was not on the ballot. Did any of that campaigning get through to you, matter to you, or were you unwavering the whole time?
I was unwavering, and I actually found him annoying.
But you also have some Democrats who are upset with Joe Biden for basically snubbing their primary. Take a look.
What do you think is going to be driving people to the polls in New Hampshire?
Well, every state is a border state, and actually in the case of New Hampshire, we truly are a border state with the Canadian border. We've actually seen an uptick in the amount of illegal crossings of the northern border, including a lot of movement of drugs. And so it impacts folks in New Hampshire just as much as many other states across the country. And so I expect it's going to be the border, but also small businesses are the backbone of the New Hampshire economy. And so rising inflation continues to be one of the #1 issues here alongside concerns about security on the southern border.
Meantime, Democrats, they're doing something tonight as well. They hope President Biden gets enough write-in votes. But here are some angry New Hampshire voters. Listen.
Well, I'm kind of angry about it. And some people have said, why should we write his name in when he won't even give us the time of day?
We're disappointed this year not to have the Democratic primary, and that's why we're doing this, because it's not meaningless like the DNC says. It really is meaningful.
I think, the Democratic National Committee has said that the primary, the Democratic primary here is not relevant or real, and I think that's just nonsense.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that, okay? I think the mind of the modern-day white liberal, especially the modern-day white liberal woman, should be studied, right? It really should, because I really don't understand for the life of me, how in the world can you be motivated to go and to vote for a guy who straight up said, hey, I'm not going to hold a primary in your state the way that we've traditionally done it because your state is too white. You're too white. I'm not going to hold a primary here. And also on top of that, considering the track record of this individual when it comes to the economy, immigration, foreign policy, considering the fact that he is the most unpopular president that we've had in a long, long, long time, maybe the most unpopular ever. How do you still line up and go write this guy in, right? You would think that people would give Joe Biden the L just as a message that, hey, you can't do this, right? Like, you can't just switch up the order of the primaries just so that you can rig things in your favor. Because, again, in 2020, Joe Biden struggled in Iowa and New Hampshire. And although they're using the race reason, right, as the reason why they want South Carolina to go first, the real actual reason is that in the future, they don't want those type of upsets happening to the establishment candidate, right? Joe Biden was the establishment candidate back in 2020, and Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders, they were smoking Joe Biden, right? In the Iowa and New Hampshire races, and Democrats don't want that to happen again, right? So they've essentially switched it up in regards to the order to make sure that, hey, these black voters that always come out here and vote overwhelmingly for the establishment candidate, these people in South Carolina, they're going to show up for us, and we're going to make sure we don't have Bernie Sanders or Pete Buttigieg types come in and get upset victories before going into Super Tuesday, okay? That's essentially what it is, right? That's literally what it is. But anyways, with that being said, the Republican primary has come down to essentially two people, Donald Trump and Nikki Haley. And despite the fact that Ron DeSantis has dropped out of the polls, it seems as if Trump is still maintaining a pretty healthy lead over Nikki Haley, and that this most likely probably will be the end result if the polls are accurate. So this is an important state to watch, okay, because if Nikki Haley loses here, it's basically over for her. She probably won't win in South Carolina either, and then she's done, okay? But also on top of that, I'm fascinated in these primary results to see just how accurate the polls are, okay? Because a lot of people have criticized the polls and said, well, the polls aren't accurate. But in Iowa, the poll was basically almost 100% accurate in regards to the result and the outcome. So we'll see if that's going to be the same for New Hampshire. So let's get into it.
Let's go to you. You're looking at every angle of the New Hampshire primary, as you always do. But first things first, let's talk about the role DeSantis' exit could potentially play here. There really aren't a lot of DeSantis voters in New Hampshire, right? But could they play some sort of a role tomorrow?
Yeah, they could. I mean, but we got a little bit of insight from our tracking poll NBC 10's doing with Suffolk University. Every night they are doing a poll there in New Hampshire, and they took one last night after the DeSantis news. This is the result they got. Trump 57, Haley 38. You showed it just a minute ago. And to put this in context, this is what the tracking poll has looked like for the past week. You see, coming right out of Iowa, Trump started at 50. He has moved up 7 points in the last week. Haley started at 34. It's bounced around a little bit. She's come up 4 points in the last week. In other words, Trump in this tracking poll at least has gained more since Iowa than Haley has. You see where DeSantis was running kind of a very, very also ran here in New Hampshire. So he was getting 6% the last time he was polled. The spread was 19 points, Trump over Haley. They take DeSantis out. The spread still 19 points, Trump over Haley. So
yeah, so this is important to note here, because with DeSantis dropping out, his votes have to go somewhere. And I think that this tells us a lot about the electorate of somebody like, Ron DeSantis, his supporters and their mindset. Half of them went to Nikki Haley and half of them went to Trump. Okay, so they basically split votes, despite the fact that DeSantis endorsed Trump. So this is a trend that we're probably going to continue to see even in a state like South Carolina. Again, this is Nikki Haley's best hope. New Hampshire pulling up an upset here and then pulling up an upset in South Carolina, which again probably won't happen. But if DeSantis voters are splitting, then that almost guarantees that Nikki Haley is probably going to lose New Hampshire and South Carolina as well too. Because in South Carolina, DeSantis was polling slightly better than in New Hampshire. So I think he was getting probably maybe 8 to 10% in the polls. So again, if that's split in South Carolina, then that means that Nikki Haley's probably going to lose, right? Nikki Haley's best hope was really for DeSantis supporters to come over to her, and she needed that to happen in totality. So Vivek Ramaswamy drops out, Trump gets a boost, DeSantis drops out, Trump and Haley gets a boost. So it's basically a wash. Again, not looking good for Namarata, okay? So again, this is very, very, very fascinating information that we're getting, which again tells you that Nikki Haley really is going to need a miracle to happen in order to actually beat Trump in New Hampshire and South Carolina, which would be her only hope of the race still continuing to be competitive.
You know, look, polls have been showing DeSantis voters' second choice is a lot more likely to be Trump than Haley. So you figure that redounds to Trump's benefit in some way. But you have to wonder, I think, is the bigger benefit to Trump actual voters he picks up from the DeSantis column, or is the benefit that after winning Iowa so big, after getting all these other endorsements for the week, that basically on the eve of the New Hampshire primary, or 2 nights before, you get the news filled with a Trump rival dropping out and endorsing him? Does it create a sense of inevitability? Does it create a sense among Republicans of, all right, this thing's basically winding up, let's get on board, just as Trump is calling for all of his opponents to get on board? Does this bring kind of Republicans who are kind of in the middle into the Trump side at the end, just by generating the kind of news that DeSantis did? Because take a look, when you look deeper inside this Suffolk poll here, again, Trump up 19 overall. Look at this chasm. Among Republicans in the poll, Trump absolutely crushing Nikki Haley. The reason why she's still, I mean, it's a big gap there, but the reason why it's only a 19-point gap is that among independents, who are going to make up 40% plus of the electorate tomorrow in New Hampshire on the Republican side, Haley's actually in this poll winning and winning big. Now, what she would need to do to actually pull off the upset tomorrow, this margin among Republicans, among independents, she'd have to drive it up even more. The all-time biggest margin on the Republican side among independents, John McCain, 2000, he won him by 42 points. Haley's going to need a McCain-like number among independents. That would get her a lot closer to Trump. And then simply, she's going to lose, by all measures, the Republican segment of the vote in the primary tomorrow. She can't lose it like this. She's got to get that Republican support up to 30%, 35%, somewhere in that area, if she's actually going to have a chance at pulling off a win in this primary. So you see where the big weakness is, you see where the clear opportunity is, but that is a lot of ground to make up in the final hours of this campaign. I guess if the Haley campaign has one precedent to cling to, 2008, Democratic side, Clinton versus Obama. All of the polls on the eve of that primary had Obama up generally by double digits. Clinton won the primary.
So there's a path. Might be a small one, but there is a path. So
yeah, so that being said, in regards to this idea that the Republican Party is basically coalescing around Trump, I mean, that's true. I mean, you're seeing all of the major endorsements, even in a state like South Carolina, a state that Nikki Haley was, governor of. Everybody, Tim Scott, the governor there, everybody's just endorsing Trump, which the Tim Scott endorsement is fascinating because Nikki Haley is actually responsible for Tim Scott being appointed to that Senate seat. And then he turns around and he endorses Trump when Nikki Haley basically is the person that elevated his career, put him in that spot, in that position in the first place. Again, it's fascinating how politics works. Loyalty is... Again, it's something that probably doesn't exist too much. You kind of go with the hand that's hot, right? I mean, and right now the hand that's hot is Trump. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of people see the writing on the wall and they are just coalescing around Trump because everybody knows that he's going to be the nominee. So you want to be seen as one of these people that are getting on board with the Trump train, right? Before it becomes super clear and obvious that the dude is going to be the nominee. I mean, it is clear and obvious, but still we have to vote. People still have to vote. So that's why you're seeing a lot of people get on board now, especially after Iowa, because everybody knows that, okay, this guy is about to essentially blow out the competition. He's going to win probably every single state. So we need to get on board now. Nikki Haley doesn't have the hot hand, even though she's the establishment pick. That's who they all would probably want to support. Again, if she had that type of support. The problem is she doesn't have that type of support among the voters. So I think that's why you're seeing so much momentum and all these endorsements going Trump's way, because people are seeing the writing on the wall that, you know, he's going to win it. So we'll see, though. Okay, we'll see how accurate the polls are. Maybe there'll be an upset. Maybe it will get interesting. But, you know, if I had to guess, I would say that you're going to see similar results to what we saw in Iowa in regards to the accuracy of the poll. So I don't expect any upsets or surprises, but who knows? Maybe we could see it either on the Republican side or the Democrat side. Wilder things have happened before in the past. Nobody really knows until people actually vote. So, hey, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.